Hello and welcome aboard Accountability Buddies. This is Jacob, and this episode I'll be joined by.
Duncan.
Jack.
John.
That's right, Duncan, Jack, and John are here to talk about our very last Legion previews, as well as pre-order day. Very exciting. Lots of new faces in the community. Lots of people asking questions about what should I get, how do I get this started, what's really worth getting or talking about, or how is this all going to work and fit together. We'll get into all that though, but before we get there, we should probably take a little time to go over some hobby progress. What have you boys been up to? It's been a minute for me.
So I have finished basing all 8 Titanicus Warhounds. I went ahead and decided to base the Warlord Sinister and War Master, and cleaned up a whole bunch of 3D printed stuff that I bought. I bought some Grimdark Terrain Titanicus markers. Instead of using the dice, you put out these markers that can be painted with all the Titan logos. I bought 3 sets of those. I got those cleaned up. And then purchases-wise, there's this company called Starforged out of China that's working with GW, and they've been putting some stuff up on Amazon before it gets to the GW stores, and I'm kind of a sucker for stuff like that. But with my latest order, and I'm just going to kind of drop this here as an exclusive, I got, you guys can see in the camera, a stack of 10% off your whole order coupon cards with my stuff. And I will drop these in our Facebook group for everybody to use. So I will be passing these on to our Accountability Buddies group.
Very cool.
And I got some pins and some keychains and stuff like that through them. And then I ordered some stuff through the local GW's birthday sale. So I got some parts for a Esoterrorist that I want to work on coming up later because that console type stayed, which is nice. And then I also got in my Little Legend Praetor character, like Duncan. I ordered one of those. And then I did my pre-orders. We're going to do pre-orders now, or you want to wait?
Let's go ahead and do pre-orders now. That way, for folks who are tuning in, who are hoping to either get on like second wave pre-orders, or who are looking to, maybe you have some people in your local game who had an army project that they like tried to cobble together, didn't get all the way off the ground. You can start to feel out what you could add to that in order to more fully flesh out that army.
Sure. So I pre-ordered through my local GW. They had a deal where if you showed up, you could get, for every $100 you spent, you got a free either a pin or a keychain or a lodge coin if it was the box itself. So I did the box, and then 2 sets of the special weapons and Loyalist book, and then a map for myself and a map for a friend through them. And then through the local game store, I'm getting another box set to split with a friend locally. He really wants the book and some of the models, and I'm also getting a Kratos through them. And that is all of... Oh, and I also got one of the bookmarks, the beat someone over the head with. It's actually heavier than the book you're currently putting it in bookmarks. Yeah, that's my pre-orders. Duncan?
Oh, let me see here. I've been working on Horus.
You've been doing amazing with that. I think people posting in the group can definitely see what you've been accomplishing in that, and it's amazing.
He's done. The head was a giant pain. The eyeballs everywhere were a giant pain, but it's all done on him. And now I'm starting on the base. And getting the base to go together was a bit of a nightmare because apparently 2 pieces of it were broken that I didn't realize. And I've finally got all that assembled. And now I've got the first base down, or the black base coat down, the white Xanathol to it, the first brown. I'm hitting the mud. I'm hitting the gray for the eagle. I'm starting to hit the metals. Working on from there. It's display bases are a process, and they take a while. Almost as much time as the miniature itself does, especially if you want to do it right. But that's all I've been working on hobby-wise. My pre-orders, I've ordered 2 of the base box, one for my friend Corin, because he is going to be playing Alpha Legion. I've ordered a box for myself and my daughter to split. She will take the contents of the box, other than the rules, and probably the whippy stick, so I don't want to arm her. And she will be playing with them, assembling them, and learning to play 30K playing Alpha Legion. We've also ordered some Alpha Legion decals, and we've ordered some other bits and pieces from various third-party bits locations on the internet to get custom heads, things like that. Sorry, she's not playing Alpha Legion. Corin's playing Alpha Legion, and I got the decals for him from John. My daughter will be playing Thousand Suns. But I got the Liber Hereticus and the Liber Astartes, or Liber Loyalist, whatever they are. And I think that's about it, other than buying more paint, because you can
never have too much paint.
Well, so it sounds like you just picked up 2 players who I'm probably going to be seeing their armies coming across my DMs, aren't I?
You're probably going to see the armies both in the DMs, and you're likely to see them, depending on when everything goes down, in Indiana next, maybe at the table there.
Well, here's hoping. Yeah, we're sizing up. I suppose I can float this. It looks like most of the local guys here have voted either the 16th or the 23rd of July for the target date for that. I think the 23rd had just a little more turnout, which is unfortunate. I know Jack said he wasn't able to make that date work, but I also, of course, need to check in with Ryan and make sure that we can get the barn on whichever date is in question.
Oh, that reminds me. We're working on a local event too. Well, I say local, but it's probably going to be in down around Houston on probably the weekend of the 23rd and the 24th. And so I'll be posting into the group with more info as that becomes available.
Very exciting. Yeah, I know. I know my locals also said like, "Hey, Ryan should be opening up the barn on the 18th, and that'll be the same day the new edition comes out. Do we want to just plan to all be at the barn and try the new stuff out?" So there's
hopefully yes.
Absolutely, we're hoping for that. At least anybody who can get away from their Father's Day plans for that. So there's a real chance that some of the locals may have already had a couple games under their belt, or at least have run some basic combat demos, just to prepare for that 16th or 23rd. What it's looking like we're on track to call that is just a games day.
Aren't they all?
Well, yeah, but we are encouraging people to bring 3,000 points of Painted Army to play and mess around with, and I'm sure there will be people running the full gamut all the way from Zone Mortalis all the way up to like 3,500 points just to see how the game plays out at that kind of next step up, especially for those listeners who may not have been aware. Heresy, up to this point, most events that I've been familiar with anyway have been either 2,500 points or 3,000 points if you want to tell people to play a big game and really take all their toys. And I think we've dropped in conversation or in passing before that some of the scuttlebutt we were hearing was that the targeted points level for the game was 3,000. Obviously, none of us have the book in hand to confirm if that's the case, but that's what we're hoping to be able to learn at and play around.
I'm personally looking forward to playing 3Ks. More stuff on the table is going to be more fun, even if it'll just be a bigger game, more immersive, more stuff, more hobby opportunity, more fun.
Yeah.
I like creating the like right now we've been usually doing 3K events, and Duncan and I went to Music City Heresy, which was another 3K event. I've always liked 3K because it gets you kind of close to what the book covers look like, and if we're adding more toys, I hate to say consumer, but yeah, I'll do it. more toys, more better.
Yep, I agree.
Well, and it was also our experience that having those extra 500 points, people tended to either spend that on a Primarch or another Lord of War choice, or if they didn't have some of those big choices available, and some folks never did because they were either just operating out of plastic kits or near plastic kits, and the idea of sinking that much into a single model was a lot for some of them at times. But they would then just be like, well, I mean, if my core list at 2,500 is solid, if I've got enough scoring choices on the table, then at 3,000 people would start spending some of those extra points on units that maybe weren't quite strong enough to make the cut at 2,500. I know that one that in the early days of Heresy didn't really come around or warm up until later would be
Mastodon?
Well, I was actually going to say the Reavers for Sons of Horus. we saw our former Luna Wolves player, Wyatt. He, especially at 3,000 points, liked to run that Rite of War even as Loyalist, and he's like, at 3,000 points, I've probably got enough to spend on some Terminators to have some more durable scoring choices, and I can get away with 2 or 3 10-man Reaver squads. And still feel really good about that. He posted strong numbers, so clearly there was something to be said for, even if folks looked at that unit and sometimes got apprehensive about the sticker price of it, so to speak, in points, far from unusable.
Oh yeah, I always liked the Reavers, and I was always a fan of them. To me, they were like the Despoilers. Too pricey for what they did in a regular, which is why I didn't bring them in anything less than.
Yeah, and that just kind of affords some of the context of 3,000 letting people run more personal lists. Might be the best way to look at it or think about it. You see that, like, a lot of armies are like, okay, I know my troops are going to do this kind of thing because, let's say I'm playing Space Wolf. My troops really want to get into close combat, so I need to pick up some tanks or some other shooting options to help reinforce or bolster that. Or sometimes you'd also have, as Duncan or Alex would have when they're playing Iron Warriors, where it's like, well, the whole army's already shooting, so unless I'm specifically looking for a unit to speed bump my way out or away of combat, let's just keep taking more shooting choices. But at 3,000 points, you really started to let people play the extra units that they personally wanted to play that you may not see in other lists from the same Legion or the same Rite of War.
It's very true. It's very true.
All of that goes a long way to say, here's hoping that same type of personalization and flair and flourish can still be present in the game as it heads into its next edition. Jack, what you been working on?
Oh my goodness gracious. I decided to put my back into it this week, so I knocked out all of my infantry that I had queued up, which was 50 models, minus basing, because I'm doing a epoxy pour for the basing. I just want to get them all done at the same time. So those are completely done, minus basing. And then I went ahead and base coated my Legion Glaive, my Legion Falchion, my Sakaran Punisher, 4 resin rhinos. Feel like I'm missing something. Oh yeah, 2 plastic demolisher tanks. So all of those are base coated and ready to go. So hopefully I'll have that knocked out this weekend.
So are these for your Death Guard, or is this for a new project?
All for Ultramarines.
All for Ultramarines?
Ultramarines.
Oh my gosh, the disease is spreading.
No. He's been diseased for many, many years.
Well, yes, but I just thought that was because he had Death Guard.
No, it's because he's been an Ultramarines player for almost as long as I've known him.
It's okay.
Interesting. I don't know if I've ever seen him show up to an event with them.
I have at Ryan's.
Okay, that might have been one of the earlier ones.
It was one of the first ones because as I learned how to paint better, I worked on other projects and then started bringing other projects around.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And that same kind of thing I know is part of what transitioned Duncan out of running his Iron Warriors into his Sons of Horus, is that he picked those up at the Matt King class that we had back in 2018.
I did indeed. The year I tried to die.
Yeah, it seems like 2018 was not a good year for a couple of us, but we've come out the other side of it. Seems things continue to go better.
Indeed. My health's doing better. Hopefully other people's healths are doing better. Hopefully everyone's hobby is doing wonderful for them. And Jacob, what have you worked on?
Well, before we go too much further, Duncan and Jack, did you two talk about... Well, I guess, Duncan, you talked about some of your pre-orders. Jack, did you lock in any orders above and beyond, like, books or such for the new edition?
I did. I ordered a box set from my local store, and along with the Kratos at my local store. The game plan is to have the Kratos ready to go on the table to the July Games Day, if you have it on the day that I can show up.
Yeah, we had a couple guys who last minute put in orders for Kratos because we weren't sure if they would be available day one. We weren't sure what the cost would be, but one guy was just like, I don't even care what the cost is. If it's available for day one pre-order, I need one of those in my army. He's like, I'm going to run probably my heavy support choices as 2 Sicarans, Kratos. He picked up back like 3 or 4 months ago, maybe. He picked up a pair of Xiphons. So he's going to run his Ultramarines with a very heavy mechanized punch backing up quite a few infantry squads. So I think he's got like 2 Rhino teams. He was previously playing Pride of the Legion, so I don't know what we're going to do about that going forward. But he's got 3 teams in Rhinos. He's got some Suzerains and a Land Raider, and then some Terminators and a Land Raider. Really, really excited to see the army on the table because I think it's really good.
I have 3 Legion squads in Rhinos, a heavy support squad in a Rhino, a Spartan, a Predator, Sicaran, Dreadnoughts galore. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Depending on if or how you can squadron things in the coming edition, it might be capable for him to run Pride of the Legion and still have a couple veteran legionaries popping out of the top hatch, doing drive-bys with the multi-melta Rhino still. Hopefully, and I really hope this is clarified in the full rules, or at least the thing that I would challenge our listeners to do is to be excellent to your opponent, and if your opponent's a cool dude, let the Ultramarines maybe claim their bonus if they're still embarked in their transport. Even if the rules aren't explicitly written to allow that, which they might be, and I might be kind of wringing my hands about nothing here, but knowing that they're supposed to be, within 6 inches? If a unit's inside its own tank, and it's chasing the shot that the Rhino just put out, it's probably within 6 inches of the tank that it's embarked in. Or
that doesn't sound at all reasonable to me.
Yeah, it's a pretty poor take.
I mean, I think that they're definitely, obviously not within 6 inches. They're definitely over there sitting on the sideboard, and that sideboard, unless you're running along the table edge, is not going to be where you're running from. So, no, I don't think that's appropriate at all.
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay.
Segue from there. So my hobby progress is specifically for my Thousand Sons. I tracked down a copy of the Infernal Master from 40K because that model is generally very heresy approximate. Not a whole lot of Marquezine iconography on him. His backpack's not perfect, but I think it's manageable. And really, as long as you change out like the head to his staff, he absolutely can just kind of pass as another power artificer armored HQ choice. And so that's my hope, is to be able to either run him there or like run him as a veteran sergeant or something, because I think the model's very nice. I am also starting to spin up work on a Osirian Contemptor. Knowing that Dreadnoughts are moving to toughness in the new edition, it was a little hard to justify some of the points investment in him in the last edition, especially when psychic rules were what they were. And he didn't have like Legions of Astartes to be able to integrate with the army like that. I felt like he was paying a big premium, like he was almost Leviathan points to not really approach that level of efficacy. And so my hope is, coming into the new edition, that there's a chance they've given him some love, and especially based on some of the weapon profiles that we saw previewed in the Heresy Weekender packet. Maybe do him up with the Force Blade, and then either find a way to dual arm him, if that's still permissible, or otherwise grab a multi-melta or a las cannon for that other arm. And specifically, I could be providing either of those weapons from the Contemptor in the big box that I pre-ordered. So I pre-ordered a big box. I pre-ordered both Legions of Astartes books, not only because, like, I'm the guy who ends up running events, and therefore, like, answering a lot of list building questions, rules questions for the guys in my local group, but also because I'm a filthy Alpha Legion player, and there are no toys that are forbidden to me. So, you've got to know what other people can take to be able to decide what you want. And I'm very much looking forward to what that might look like in the coming edition. I'd be very disappointed if they took that part of the identity away from Alpha Legion. Overall, though, I'm probably expecting my big box is going to get parted out. I think I've got Alex, who a Spartan is one of the few options or items he does not own for his Iron Warriors, so I think he's going to be getting those. We may have a player or two who may want Praetors. Otherwise, our good friend, Perpetual Painting Dave, has asked for the Praetors just to do some like kit bash and conversion stuff with, and I'd be more than happy to ship those off to him, leaving the Terminators and the Mark VI infantry for what hopefully will be a, we'll call it primarily plastic, Raven Guard project. Whether I run Assault Marines or just tacticals, I think getting those 40 models there, as well as 10 Cataphracti Terminators, that's very, very appealing to me. That's something I'm hoping I can put to good use.
Well,
Does that cover it for all of us?
Pretty sure that covers most of everything we're doing or have ordered.
So,
Yeah, I think so. I did miss one thing a couple episodes ago. I talked about it on the last episode, but I missed it. Last episode was I watched all of the Warhammer Plus stuff, and I was going to touch on that a little bit. There's the Angels of Death miniseries that everyone's kind of seeing. It's black and white and red. That one's really cool, and especially heresy themed. As in the end of the show, one of the Blood Angels does go to the Black Rage, and so you get to see Horus as this guy kind of flips in and out of current reality and back into heresy. Then there's an Exodite show where a Eldar Ranger is going around killing a bunch of Tau, which is always good to see. But the Eldar is voiced by Clancy Brown, so that's kind of neat to see an actual, famous actor voicing an Eldar. I think he's a little gravelly for an Eldar, but whatever. And then I watched the Lore Master episode on the Sons of Horus, and that had some things that maybe were a little bit outside of what we've known before as far as history-wise. They said that Chthonians were on Terra for the kind of the first mustering of the Luna Wolves, and that was kind of the thing that really approached me as like, wow, that's really out of left field as far as history goes. But I'm not endorsing the cost of Warhammer Plus. It's up to you if you think that that's worth the money or not. It was definitely like a full evening of watching the animations with a friend of mine, and so we had fun for whatever a month would be worth on a streaming service.
Did you enjoy it though? That's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with GW I've definitely paid more for less, but you could just kind of see it as signing up for Netflix for a month. I could see someone doing that to get the enjoyment out of it.
There you go.
Well, yeah,
as long as you feel you got your money's worth, that's really all that matters at this point.
Yeah, especially for new players who are trying to get some grips on some of the lore without having to comb through all the various YouTube channels that have compiled things. I'll
say the downside of the Lore Masters is since it's a proprietary GW website, it's a little confusing. And since it's not on YouTube, there is no fast forward, and I usually watch all of my YouTube channels at 2-speed.
Yep.
So watching this guy methodically plot on about how the Luna Wolves went and created the largest event, it's like, oh my god, this is so boring. If it was only at 2-speed, I could probably get other stuff done at the same time.
Yeah. And the other point that I was going to bring up, don't they also have some more advanced painting tutorials on there?
Yeah, they have. They call them master classes, and they're pretty good. I'll admit. And they show good views. It's like the GW YouTube channels, but they go into some of the things that might be considered more advanced painting mentality. Like it's not just like how to paint a Space Marine, but there's one that goes through color theory. There's some really good flesh tone ones where it's not only just like normal flesh, but they were doing, I think it was a Gene Stealer cult or was an Eldar or something, they were doing like sickly flesh, which isn't really something that you normally see when it comes to painting tutorials. And then they did a lot with the Avatar Arcane. They broke that down into multiple pieces. They're also doing a lot of older books. They're not like the Siege of Rax just came out on there. So if you can't sail the high seas or shell out the $200 it costs per book on eBay. You could do the Warhammer Plus wise and get to read all that really cool fluff that kept me involved while I was going to classes in college.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And, I think you've also made a worth noting point as far as, if you consume everything that's on the platform and you're not feeling like you're going back regularly for some of those painting tutorials, pick it up for the 1 month or for the 2 months and then cut it off until they get a chance to build a little more back up.
Yeah, and they're not like gating the content like, oh, you only paid for January, so you're only going to get January's and December stuff. They're saying, it's just like Netflix. If you want to watch that show and you don't want to watch it weekly, go ahead and subscribe when it's done. And that's kind of what I did, was I just waited for a large enough catalog to build up and then went ahead and subscribed.
Yeah. Before we start getting into our Legion previews, kind of hinging off our talk about Games Workshop and about the pre-order process, we really want to just take a short amount of time and to bring attention to something that kind of disappointed us about how pre-orders appear to have been handled from Games Workshop. We've gotten reports from a couple folks, and to a certain extent, it appears that Jack and I can confirm this ourselves with our respective friendly locals, is that Games Workshop asked or mandated, it's not really an ask, stores to order certain amounts of product to be able to get more than just the big box on the shelf. On the one hand, cool to see that the big box is trying to get on the shelves, Games Workshop is trying to push that, and given the number of products that if you go and look at the page right now, they're already sold out. There's something at least a little exciting about the fact that Heresy might have found its way to new players, new hobbyists, and that we might be able to actually see the effect of that with them going mainstream, with them offering for the first time dice and templates and Primarchs. The Primarchs I know are a short-term thing. We're a little less certain on the Legion dice and the transfer sheets. We're hopeful that those are now going to be mainline Games Workshop items. That's immense for this hobby. For the gate to entry, that trying to save up or do a group buy to get Forge World down to like reasonable shipping costs, or to try to share the free shipping with people who are like, man, I only need 1 or 2 things. That's put a burden on this community that, even though it's caused us to have to make friends and neighbors and to be a very cooperative, very collaborative group, has definitely stunted Heresy's growth. To see then what is allegedly Games Workshop saying, well, we really do want to prioritize our own selves and our own margin. And I do understand they're a business and they're not our friend. They are here to make money. To see them then still gate certain aspects of their product and their product pipeline behind distributors, namely themselves, their web store, and their first-party stores, to see them gate certain purchases or certain allocations of items to those is very disappointing. And I definitely drew a parallel to how certain other hobby games or collectible games have behaved over the last 2 calendar years, in the way that they've really tried to, at least in part, again, I'm not trying to saint anyone here, and I'm not trying to say that any company has been ultimately, at the end of the day, in for anything other than for its own self. But the gap in treatment that we saw and experienced between Games Workshop and this other company, this other entity, with how they treated third-party friendly locals is unfortunate and a little disheartening to us. So we want to take the time to praise and applaud Games Workshop for doing better than I think some of the more jaded, myself possibly included on that list, may have expected this event to go. There's still room to do better, and we hope that they can listen, can do better.
They don't have a lot of hope in that effect. but we do hope so.
Yeah, we sure do. Mostly because it doesn't cost us anything to hope that things improve. Before we transfer over to talking about Legion previews, I see that we've had another member join the chat. Jamie, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How about y'all?
Oh, better than I deserve.
That's not really difficult.
Isn't it, though? If you set standards low, you're almost always going to be excited. Jamie, what have you been up to in the hobby space? What did you pre-order this weekend?
So I've actually been like crazy busy. Some people know from the group, but my wife decided to go on a cleaning rampage and literally threw out all my hobby stuff into the garbage one day while I was home. And so I had to spend a whole entire day rescuing everything. Let's call it that. And I ended up moving it back into another area where I have a lot more room. In fact, it's directly behind me, like for everybody that actually. So that took about a week to get all that back together. And I ended up starting the lion, like painting, doing base layers on it. And then after looking at it, I was like, I'm missing some parts. So I ended up losing the forearm, like the kind of like the mid and forearm and the elbows, threw everything out.
For the lion himself?
Yes.
Oh.
So
as I said then, we told us the lion has successfully been disarmed.
Yeah. So that hit a halt, and I had to order a new lion. Not very happy about that. Just literally to get two parts, because there's like no way for me to kind of jerry rig it, like, because of the size difference. I really couldn't substitute other parts forearm. They have like huge spikes that stick out on the elbows as well, which, like, I mean, I guess I could stuff something like that. I just said whatever and ordered another one. So if anybody needs parts for a lion or just Dark Angel parts that you want off of him, let me know. Anyways, while that's all in transit, I started a Mark III Dark Angel Tactical Squad, a Mark IV Dark Angel Tactical Squad, and then a Mark III Heavy Weapon Squad with las cannons. They're all built, assembled, and primered and base coated. I just finished base coating them a little bit earlier. Did the bases. They're ready for that. So it's just detail and weathering. All three of the squads will be. And then what did I order? Way too much. Let's just put it that way. I got the box, the main box set, and I got both Legion books, or not Legion, but Traitor and Heretic, or Heretic and Loyalist books. And then I got a Dark Angel transfer sheet and a set of the Dark Angel dice, because I'm a hoser for it, but it has a Dark Angel ballistic die with it. And then I
yes, the Legion specific dice coming with the color patterned Legion scatter die. Yep.
I tried to order some more boxes of Mark IIIs, and I also tried to order a Kratos, but GW sold out. I think I went in my GW shop about maybe like 2:30 Central Time yesterday afternoon, and they had already sold out of all the Mark IIIs, all the Mark IV, the Kratos, and the Mark 1C Rhino. They're sold out, like GW web store and store like pre-order. And so I have a very good relationship with my GW manager, and he is going to end up holding back a Kratos for me. And if he gets any Mark III, he'll hold at least one Mark III box for me. They come in. That's it.
It's good that you have such a good relationship.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I don't go in there frequent, to be honest with you. I used to go in there, and basically the only thing I used to buy from my GW shop was paints. And I have a ton of paints. When they actually carried the airbrush line, I would go in and buy all my airbrushes from them. Now that the airbrush line is special order, or like you have to order it off the website, I don't do that anymore. But like, I'm friends with he lives close by. He lives in my I live very, very close to my GW. And they moved recently to a new location that's a lot higher foot traffic right next to a Starbucks. So there's always a line trying to get a store because of the people at the drive-thru for the Starbucks. But he's like, we do stuff outside of the hobby. Sometimes we'll go out to dinner and hang out. And he also, I still am very active playing Pokemon Go, and he does that as well.
what you're saying is he's more of a buddy than he is just a.
Right, and we like he like if you go into his store, it's actually a really high volume store for the North America. It's usually in the top 5, the top 10, and like he's just a cool guy to hang out with, and like if he shoots straight from the hip. He doesn't try to. He's not like one of the guys when you walk in that try to.
He's not a sales rep.
Yeah, he's not a sales rep. He is a legit hobbyist because he has a bunch of other stuff he hobbies. And the stuff he likes, he pushes, and helps people out. And the stuff he doesn't, he's not going to deny a sale, but like he's not going to try and force it on people. So he's not like your typical guy. And he's been with the store for, I don't know, maybe like 7-8 years at this point. Like when they first opened our store, we like went through like a manager literally like every 6 months. And since he's been at the store, he's the only one.
Very cool. Well, with that having been said, are we ready to get into our last of our Legion previews?
I think we are.
Let's get to it. I suppose, technically, I'm gonna divert again. We did get a few surprises that were not talked about before pre-order day, or kind of just right in the run-up to pre-order day. The first of which was the Leviathan has gone plastic.
Yes.
Was that available here on pre-order day? As I'm combing through some of the stuff on the
It was
website?
not.
It was
not. It was
okay.
just announced.
So that's a later wave item.
Yeah, and the armament on that's so oddball that they don't include any of the combat weapons.
Or at least, yeah, that's the implication I got from the article, is that the close combat weapons are in a different kit, or curious.
They're probably separate like they are now. I mean, but still, it's so odd that they...
But if you have the new rulebook, which some people already have preview copies for, there are pictures of the close combat version of the Leviathan, the plastic.
Ah, okay. So we're expecting that might just be a separate kit.
I don't know if it's a separate kit or like an add-on.
Like another sprue, the same way when they first came out with the night kit, and then they brought out the one that had the big the
missile
assault
launcher
cannon, and then the back
cannon.
Mount. Yep.
I really hope they don't do what they did to the War Master, and that they really say shooty Leviathan and a close combat Leviathan, and you will buy them both.
Yep.
Yeah, the big Night Titan that came out, where you've got two distinct armaments.
There's precedence
for AT. It's like one of them is all close combat, one of them is all shooty. Even though they are exactly the same underlying kit, you can't get them separate. You can't get the sprue separately, even though they've done that for everything else in Titanicus.
And
that's the most expensive kit by far.
Yeah, regressing into some old bad habits.
Yeah, like 5th edition, you had dreadnoughts that were basically like, you had the regular box dreadnought that had some basic close combat, but then you also had the...
Oh, yeah, they did the plastic venerable kit with the other half of the guns.
Yep.
And there was the old fiddles that you only got one arm. Technically didn't even know what it was on the box.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that they're going to do that, but they have pictures. They've released the information on the shooting Leviathan, and they kind of ran through all the weapons available for it, but then everybody was kind of like, there's no dreadnought close combat weapon or a drill listed. So we're kind of like, what's going on here? And then if you some GW stores actually have preview copies of the box with the rulebook. In the rulebook, they have a close combat Leviathan.
Ah, okay, yeah. So the other thing past the surprise announcement of the plastic Leviathan, and presumably then they're going to keep all the Legion specific ones in resin and have those Forge World only items. But myself and a couple others noticed that the Scout Squad from Space Marines of 40k yore, kind of the neophytes, the initiates, the Legion Scout Squad went up for preview. And unfortunately, this is the same plastic kit we've had forever. But these are the guys who are in the Carapace armor, the 4-up. So we're not sure if these are being pushed as a substitute to the 4-up armor save recon squad that Forge World has sold forever, or you've got the guys with either the shotguns or the snipers. We don't know, but that was definitely an interesting thing to see on the order sheet for pre-order day.
Did you pre-order any?
No, I have previously put together more than a few of those kit, and I'm good. That's not to say that it's a bad kit, but it's not a good kit. Definitely shows its age, because I think that kit even like predates 4th edition. It might be now the oldest kit in the Space Marine range. Okay. So these are not the sniper scouts. These are scouts. These are the ones who get shotguns, bolters, or bolt pistol chainsword. And
It's
then
the
you get
first
the
kit that they did CAD design on. You can
Mhm.
that was they were coming out with, and you can definitely tell it with those faces. Those are probably some of the worst faces GW's ever made.
They're not good. They have not aged well.
So that's also just like a really odd random kit. So like that we've never really had, because we had recon squads point out.
Yeah,
We
so
never
that's
had the recon armor though. Like Forge World never technically made the 4+ save guys. They made the recon squads, but they were always in power armor.
yeah. I thought they might have been like slender power armor, but yeah, that's fair. They were. It's weird because they put the Camellia line on them, and I thought you only got the Camellia line if you stepped down. Was that native on them? I can't remember now. I know
You could
that.
buy
I couldn't tell you.
Go ahead.
I didn't use them enough to actually matter. I think I used them in one game total, so I don't know.
I think you could buy it either whichever armor you got. You could still pay the points for the cloaks, and I've
Okay.
got parts for mine. I don't know. I had a bunch of those kits, and I sold them off when I was gonna run a recon army, and now I'm probably gonna take parts from the berserkers and from some empire kits and build the poofy armed scouts, but make them more kind of modern.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get some jacked scouts.
Yeah, I've got parts from Empire, so I can make the poofy arms all from Space Crusade and First Edition.
Yeah, that'll be cool to see. But yeah, so that was a big surprise to see that kit that they didn't even repaint for the event, because that's the same art that they've always had for these models and for the box art. Yeah, that's they're still the product shot that's up on the web store is a 40K kit. So they didn't even rebox it for Heresy. It doesn't look like that's very fun to me.
They also put the drop pods. I've noticed that.
Yeah, so those got to stay. I don't know when that change happened, but seeing the classic drop pod now moved up to $50 from the $35 I had always remembered it as was some sticker shock, and I think my heart skipped a beat a little bit when the preview page went up, and I went and I found the Rhino, and it's a brand new Rhino kit. It's actually brand new. It's all their current design practices and everything, and so hopefully that means like we also did not hopefully anything. It means they had to do new molds for it. None of the I packed a new or unpacked a new Razorback, and the plastic's a little thin. I'm hoping it all holds together long enough to get on tabletop.
That was a problem. I'm really honestly kind of hopeful about some of these kits being all new. Maybe we'll start seeing a little bit less of the wear on some kits that are on the molds that is showing through on some of the kits that have been around for a while. I don't know about you all, but the last box of I think it was Mark IV guys or Mark III guys I opened up was starting to show a little bit less crisp detail on the edges.
I'm still swimming in Mark 4s and Mark 3 at this point, so I couldn't tell you like on reason. I still have tons of big boxes, but yeah, I know there's certain kits that they've had issues. Kind of like they just keep running. They start not looking as it's been an issue with the IG and the Tau stuff for a while.
Yeah, those are old molds.
Yep, but there's hope because they're adding new kits in. I mean, like they've shown the Sarkarian. Which is going to be plastic as well, which that's awesome. This Rhino kit is like all new. It's not a
repack.
It's not a repack. It's like it's legit Mark 1's all plastic, non-horrible half and half in plastic.
And as we talk about some of the older kits, Mark III and Mark IV are at $80 for 20 models. That was a little higher than what I hoped to see, but it's probably lower than what I expected. And specifically, I think the Mark III squad used to cost a little bit more than the Mark IV, so seeing that kind of flattened back down, that's pretty cool.
So I got into discussion at GW with a couple guys when I was in there on set, and they're like, "Well, why are these why are these like $25 to $30 more expensive than they were before?" And I'm like, "Well, you were paying like $60 or $65 for 10 men." And they're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, they're 80 now." I was like, "Yeah, but you're getting 20. You're getting basically double the same screws."
2 full kits, you would hope.
Yeah. So you're just like, I mean, that's if you break it in half, that would have been $40 for 2. That's less than you were paying before, actually, going, like, if you just bought the boxes all.
Yeah, and what's more, now you can also, if you so chose, you could build a 10-man squad of just bolters, and then you could harvest 2 specials, because it does come with 2 copies, Flamer, Melta, Plasma. And I think the Mark III kit had a heavy bolter, and the Mark IV kit had the missile launcher?
Mark IV had missile launcher and heavy. And
okay.
Mark III only had the heavy. It's a different style heavy bolter.
Okay. Yeah, because
the Mark IIIs have like the round drum, and then the Mark IVs have the regular ammo box.
Yep.
So.
And I'm not that mad about the price point on them because a 10-man task squad and for 40k Marines is $55. So
Yeah,
80 for 20
Mhm.
is almost free in GW money.
Yeah, that calls back to what I said in our first show, where somebody understood if you want people to play larger squads, you need to make it fiscally feasible for that to happen.
Wait. Let's also all remember, we've been playing Heresy for a long time. We don't really have any ability to discuss fiscal responsibility as we've been playing Heresy for so long.
No, that's not true. I bought Mark IV squads when they came in the big $100 box, and you got 3 Mark IV squads and 5 Cataphractes for, $100. That was way fiscally responsible compared to these prices.
So let's just put it this way: the amount of money that I spent on the new box is what I would have paid for, because I was getting deals on 4 of the old box. So that's a lot of Mark IVs, is what I'm getting at.
So what you're telling me is we all spent way too much?
Yes.
I never bought a single Mark III, Mark IV, Cataphracti, or Tartarus separately. I did buy a lot of somebody's like 45 painted or 45 glued together Cataphracti Terminators, so I could do probably the Legion list. They were just glued at the waist, and the arms were glued on, so I got to do all the armaments I wanted. So that's the only time I ever bought anything outside of more Calths and more Prospero boxes.
Yeah, I mean, like I between my own personal purchases and then like all the armies that I have done for Toys for Tots with just like leftover bits and pieces from those boxes, because I was getting those boxes for the Toys for Tots. I've never had to buy like individually boxed Cataphracti, Mark IIIs, Mark IV Dreadnought ever.
I have bought some, but that's mostly because I'll be like, I don't really feel like popping open this Calth box. I'm saving it for that army. Yeah. When I start on that army, I'll go ahead and pop open the next Calth box.
On maybe a less positive note, so we see the Rhino at 47. Okay, that's about what a Rhino kit was going for, and this is now self-contained, having to rifle around and find how to get a pintle-mounted multi-melta or anything like that. It's all in the kit. But the Kratos at 125, I know that we've seen some shots of that, and that's about the size of a Spartan, and they are not yet pre-ordering the Spartan standalone. But buddy, $125 on one tank is, and it's not even a super heavy.
I'm not even remotely surprised.
I'm not surprised, but I am shocked.
It's a tough swallow. I mean, that was really just because it's an all new kit. It's not really being translated over from something we've had. It was a tough. I really wanted one just because I wanted to see how it compared to some of the newer Marine hover tanks and stuff, like how complicated they. But like as I said, it sold out. But yeah, the $125 price point kind of set me back a bit. But I'm willing to bet, just because of the size of it, that it's probably going to be the Spartan when it's single packed by itself is probably going to be about the same price.
I'm saying the Spartan's probably going to be like 135, 140.
Maybe.
Yeah, I figure.
I'm probably assuming. I don't know. For me, I'm thinking 150, just because.
What are Land Raiders going for now? Are they $100 now?
I've got the site open. A minute.
I think at the 150 price point, then they're knocking on the same price as a Knight Titan, which I believe are 150. So I think they're going to come in right under that.
I I'll make a bold
They're 80
prediction. What if they run it the
rated
same
are 85.
125 as a Kratos?
That's what I'm thinking. And I've already seen this. They've put pictures out of the Spartan. There's leftover parts on the Spartan sprue that I'm not going to say are for a Cerebus or a Typhon, but they kind of look like the parts you would need for either one of those. So like maybe if they're going to do a single pack Spartan, maybe it's going to be all three of those tanks, and then maybe could justify a higher price. But if
then you could move somewhere in the 150.
I mean, I'm not saying that it is, but there was definitely leftover center and front armor parts that are not used on the Null Spartan.
So it could be, or it could not be, but we don't really know because
Right.
GW obviously hasn't telling us everything is what's going on.
I mean, you can go on the website.
I think
Sorry,
Jamie's going to say I'll follow Jamie. That's a very reasonable inference. Games Workshop has never wasted plastic on a sprue.
Right. I mean, like, they're very expensive to make those sprues, okay? And so, like, if there's extra pieces on there, there's a reason for them to. There's kind of what I'm getting.
No, I totally follow.
And I mean, like, it's not like it's. I mean, if you wanted to go look, you could go look at these Spartan, like the plastic sprues that are in the big box, and go through and look at the parts that you need to build the Spartan. And if you look towards, it's kind of most of the main parts you need are in the center part of the main sprues. And if you look towards the outside edges of the sprues, there's kind of like weird leftover parts that like don't really fit anything. So.
Which does fit with the idea of it being an eventual scaled kit to include other bits and stuff when it comes out.
And I think that's also probably pretty prudent. If they've moved the Leviathan over, if they've moved over the Sikaran, they didn't even do the Kratos in resin. You've got to imagine that it has been expensive to make and maintain the molds for those super heavy choices, never mind what we would all call quality control issues, especially for some of Forge World's customers who might be more willing, especially if they live on that side of the pond, to say, okay, I've bought this thing, I spent all this money on it, and it came out looking like this. Can you replace these bits? It's probably worth the R&D cost alone just to blunt those kind of issues in quality control and customer service.
Absolutely, it would be.
So, speaking of which, I'm looking at the Mark 1C because, that would be the basis for a lot of other tanks. Horus Heresy, just like they've got them up on their website. And there's an awful lot of smokestacks, like way too many for a little tank on the sprue. Like, it looks like there may be there's like either two different sets of smokestacks, which is kind of odd to me.
So you're saying there's 8, one set for if you put doors and one set if you possibly put sponsons.
Yeah, and the center, if you look at the sides of this Mark 1C, like where the door would go is a totally separate like drop-in slot. Like basically it's got the front of the treads and the back of the tread guards, and then like where the door would normally be in the middle of the side, it's like a totally separate part, which is
those smokestacks are halves.
Okay,
that's why you have so many. Because there's no way that those are, because it's got the armor on it too.
Yep.
There's no way that they made those as thick as it would need to be to make the whole smokestack. That'd be thicker than the sprue itself.
But it does look like it comes with all the panel weapon.
Yeah, that's a separate.
So
that sprue is also in the Kratos pictures as well. Yep. The whole sprue. So everyone's got the same hatches. Everything's got the same hatches. Everything's got the same pinto weapons and dozer blades.
Looks like there's even a chip on there.
Yay!
Oh no.
Yeah, there's a missile launcher, heavy flamer, heavy bolter, melt. Looks like two. What do you call them? What are the the bolter?
The combi bolters.
Combi bolter. Sorry. And then it looks like there's.
Yeah, it looks like there's actually combi weapons as well. So like the combi.
It looks like there's a plasma.
And then the double bolters, and then
One thing I do find interesting with that is the fact that the side panel that would have the round door in it is molded off, so they could technically replace it with like a flat non-door panel.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. It's like a totally separate, like the whole door assembly on the side is like a totally separate.
Right.
It's not part of the side.
And so that could work with a Venator laser destroyer or a Legion Daniel's pattern Vindicator.
I work with a number of
Yeah.
things.
What's also cool is on that weapon sprue is there's an open hand for a Marine, so you can do kind of that leaning guy that was for me used in a bunch of different conversions because of the different poses that you can get out of the hand. So you could do signaling, you could do pointing, a whole bunch of
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Yep, I'm looking at it. It's kind of almost he's got an open hand that almost looks like he's pointing.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff on here, and 3 different heads.
1, 2.
On the
Yeah,
right
there's
side.
an armored and maybe 2 bear ones. There also looks like there's a Havoc launcher as well.
Yep. Yeah, this is, I mean, hell, if that sprue alone was sold separately, I know I'd be probably replacing a few of the rhinos that I use. But I've been, for all the heavy weapons, I've been casting the little bitty turret on the Baneblade and then sticking multi-meltas on that for my rhinos to make it look somewhat Space Marine-y, but also old.
Yeah, it's definitely an intricate look this sprue. And also, to be honest with you, $47 for the Rhino, that was actually a lot less than I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I loaded up back when Spiky Bits was kind of getting out of bits, so I bought 25 rhinos for $25. It was funny because they were like, or I was telling all his coworkers, like, watch out for this guy, he's going to buy all of our rhinos, and then I walked up and bought all their rhinos. So I'm known as the rhino guy whenever they see me at Adepticon or whatever. But yeah, I'm still working through some of those rhinos for kits because my last Adepticon list was 12 Predators, 6 Vindicators, a Deimos, 4 Sicarans, and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, I'm still working through rhino chassis.
As we're talking about models, I just finished the Infernal Master that I've been working on while we've been talking. I can't swear to this, I think this is my first, brand new GW plastic since, oh man, I put together the 8th edition starter. And don't get me wrong, I bought some of their, rubric kits, and I might end up putting together a couple more of those. But as far as, a character, a single character, figure, this is the first one of these I've put together that's been made by GW in the last, 4 years it's been now. I've put together a lot of Legion figures, I've put together models from Wild West Exodus. This dude snapped together easy, cleaned up nice. Yeah, alright. I had thought, cool, other companies have advanced and they're making nicer models, and compared to some of the other models that I used to put together, some of the stuff that I have done for Wild West Exodus or for Star Wars Legion has been far nicer than I would have expected. But Games Workshop really is still staying up on top of and maybe even ahead. I don't know if I want to leverage that praise yet, but this model's awesome. And whoever designed it made it very easy to kind of hack the Zinchi bits off and get a very appropriate Heresy era HQ choice out of him. Very impressed.
Yeah, when I was doing those Gundams I mentioned last time, it's definitely a complete 180 from GW, but my wife was complaining the whole time about, if I don't move it exactly right, and I had this problem too, is I pushed the thruster a little bit too far and it catapulted across the room.
Yep.
So GW gets crap for prices and for quality and all this other stuff, but I mean, honestly, for what these are, and they are game pieces, so they're not going to be, they're not going to be Tamiya models. They're not going to have the correct number of rivets on the correct number of buttons on the doors and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for what they are, I think that they're probably one of the better gaming models out there.
Well, yeah, and some of that Gun Plus stuff. So I've done a lot of their real grade stuff. And that continues to blow me away. The level of articulation that you can get out of those, and those are awesome, but they're very clearly designed for you to pose them very, not limitedly, because, they do have incredible articulation that would rival a lot of, action gears. But they're designed for you to kind of set them into whatever position and leave them on your shelf for long periods of time. They are not playthings, because their joints, even though they are articulate, they are delicate.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really cool, the strides that you can see. I've been putting together Gundam kits since the 90s or the aughts, and just seeing how far Bandai has pushed those in terms articulation, level of detail, pre-molded sprues, or colored injection molded sprues. That's really cool. But they definitely come across as unchallenged in their respective fields.
Yeah. My next kit, I bought one of the new Master Grade Doms, and I'm going to convert it with an old Master Grade 1.0 Zaku to make a prototype. So, but looking at the difference, and those kits are almost 30 years apart, you can definitely tell quality-wise. Like, there's no posability in the waist on the Zaku, but the Dom has like three articulation points on the leg joints itself, like the upper thigh itself. But still, with GW, yeah, I know we're talking weeb stuff. You don't care.
No. It's just all the articulation on that.
Yeah,
it just sounds. Jeez.
Well,
sounds like a nightmare to put together.
So a real grade Gundam is like the scale of a Contemptor Dreadnought, maybe somewhere between like a Contemptor and a Knight. But like you have individual fingers that are fully articulate on those, and they come off the sprue fully articulate. So you don't have to socket any ball joints together. You just cut it off, and it's there and it's working.
Yeah, and that they've also done that with a lot of the Gundams. You'll see these like power cables and things like that kind of hanging out. And back in the day, they would give you a spring, and then you would cut out the individual cabley bits and thread the spring, and then glue the spring in on the upper thigh and then the lower calf, and then you would hope that it held together. Now, the spring is no longer a spring; it's a semi-flexible cable in the mold, and then you just cut the cable bits off. They're already pre-threaded onto the flexible cable. You cut them off, and it's ready to go. So there's so much forethought put into how the molds are assembled and how they go together. And I've seen molds before that are 4 parts, and one of those is clear. So like you'll have clear eye lenses on one sprue, as well as like a yellow check, the V fin, and then also a main body panel and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like my friend was complaining the other day, he's building some of the new Eldar to make a Craft World Eldar list for Heresy when those Mournival rules eventually come back out. He was complaining because back in the old GW days, you would have a Marine, and each Marine would be in its own corner of the sprue. Well, now GW is trying to make as much use of the sprue area as possible. He's like, I'm having to look at each corner for these, parts of this jet bike, and I'm like, yeah, that's, but look at how much more detail you've got. Look at how much more convertibility options you've got, because he likes converting everything. He's like, yeah, well, it's just annoying right now. It'll be cool later.
I've never seen models with that level of detail, and I'll be absolutely honest here. I don't know what I would do if I was involved in a hobby that had that level of detail that you're talking about. That's just mind blowing to me.
So what's the highest grade for Gundam?
The perfect grade, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, well, the new one is the perfect grade Unleashed is the new Gundam that's got. It's actually has 5 sub-assemblies, so you build from the lowest level of the skeleton out, and each section of the skeleton is hidden, but then there's like 35 panels you can open on the final bit, and it's 12 inches tall about when it's done, so it's about the size of a Barbie or a 1/6 scale model.
I've built some before. My brother, like, way off track at this point, but we used to be big into Gundam Wing. I still have all the DVDs for Endless Waltz and all that. And so he got really big into the kits, and we had a Wing Zero perfect grade where like literally the wings are feathered, and each one of the individual feathers is flexible.
Yeah, and they've actually done that with the. There's even third parties now that have individual flexible feathers, and then those are on movable sticks so that you can do that opening in the
pose, blurling out.
Yeah, so that you can have all the feathers floating in the wind pose.
I'll chase this. Have you guys put together Legos recently?
Yes, my son's hardcore into Lego.
Over the last 2 years, I put together a lot of their more adult stuff. So I got like the Tokyo Skyline that they put out for their architecture set. The bonsai tree, the Lego NES. I'm still trying to track down the Mario 64 question block, and I see it back there.
Up there in the picture. That's a Technic 911 GT3, and right behind it is a Technic.
You still with us?
I think we lost him.
Yeah, we did. Unfortunate, but that's okay. Man, those toys have gotten incredible from like what I always thought was possible to seeing them actually do it. It's a fun time to be playing with toys. I think
Well-
we've now spent our requisite maximum amount of time gushing about plastics and models. Let's talk some
I would
crunch.
agree. I would agree. Let's do that.
Yeah, so we did have just 4 more legions to touch on, and that means we are starting with the Word Bearers, the truly most vile of the vile. They have, as their Legions of Astartes rule, True Believers. A model with this special rule may never have its leadership characteristic modified below a value of 6. There's some implications there. Furthermore, if one or more models with this special rule are part of a combat that results in a draw, you win. You are considered to be winning by a point.
Right there is both nifty and scary.
If combat still works the way it does, where you take a -1 leadership penalty for each casualty you suffer, Word Bearers are going to be real ugly to try to dislodge if you are Blood Angels or Space Wolves. If you're an army that really needs to cut people up and run them over in close combat, Word Bearers are now still passing something like 40% of their leadership checks, even if you just absolutely massacre them in close combat.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit of an unpleasant
rough.
surprise for anyone who's not expecting it.
Yep, rude awakening. And we also find that they have a unique psychic weapon. And specifically it says the Burning Lore grants this, or at least that's the implication from the fluff passage above it. Hellfire, a psychic weapon. Uses a range template, Strength 7, AP 4, Assault 1, Rending 6+, Deflagrate, and Psychic Focus. Psychic Focus. Before making any to-hit rolls, make a psychic check. If you pass, you attack as normal. If you fail, you suffer Perils of the Warp, and if the model is not removed as a casualty, it may attack as normal, but it may not use this weapon. So that carries with it a pretty heavy implication about what we're seeing happen with magic going forward. First and foremost is that the psychic phase is gone. Ding dong, the witch is dead. I am so glad to be done with the psychic phase or the magic phase as a dedicated phase.
We've had confirmation of that for a bit, though.
Did we? I know that, like, those of us who may have done some extracurricular reading may have found that, but given how they handled the Thousand Suns, and they were like, oh, here's your Legion preview, you get cults still. And it's like, okay, so can you tell us what the cults do? No.
Well, they talked about in the actual preview video that came out a few days ago that
Okay.
there is no psychic phase.
I
Yeah,
think
we
even-
saw it on the 8 pages thing too.
And I think they even said, like, when the reveal video back for the Weekender or whatever they called it, I think they even said that there was no psychic.
Regardless, wonderful. I love seeing that now you can have psychic guns that you take a test for, and if you pass, you get to shoot the gun. If you fail, bad stuff happens, but you might still get to shoot a different gun. Very neat.
It kind of makes me wonder what we've seen with the psychic powers before, that some of them will be, you can use it without taking a psychic check at this level, and you can use it with taking a psychic check to get this extra bonus.
Oh, that's right. We got that as part of the Space Wolves preview.
Correct. Kind of
Yep.
makes me wonder if we're going to see other weapons go that same style of function.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I hope, given that they state that the Burning Lore just gives you this weapon now, and the implication, if I read into it correctly from the Space Wolf article, is that Caster of Runes either get or can choose that power that was listed there. The ability to move back to kind of a 5th edition style. We've approximately balanced all these psychic powers, and at the start of the battle, after you look at army lists, pick spells. Doing away with the amount of prep work that would go into a heavily psychic Thousand Suns force, where you had to spend minimum 15 minutes, it felt like, going through, okay, well, this guy's got to roll on this table, this guy's got to roll on this table, and then having to do those rolls and sort everything out and go fetch your cards, and then doing away with all of that, as well as seemingly, possibly, doing away with rolled warlord traits. The less time that players have to spend getting ready to play a game, the more I think that, especially for those who haven't been playing Heresy up to this point, for your layperson that is, the more I think that will make it easier for them to invest in wanting to play this game.
I agree.
I think that's a lesson they've picked up with Sigmar and with 40k, and it's good to see it. From the baddest of the bad to arguably the goodest of the good, we've got the Salamanders. Salamanders have Blood of Fire as their Legions Astartes trait. When rolling to wound against a model with this special rule, for any attack inflicted by Flame, Melta, Plasma, or Volkite, reduce the to wound roll by -1. This does not affect the strength, only the result of to wound. In addition, multi-wound models gain It Will Not Die 6+. Or multi-hit point, hull point models, so your vehicles get this too. It's cool that, unlike Iron Hands, where a Meltagun will not instant death you, a Meltagun will still instant death a Salamander, but it will only wound on a 3+. Or plasma weapons will only wound on a 3+. Who's very strong. Very strong.
The talk of modify the roll, that's got to be one of the first times we've seen that in a long while.
Mm-hmm. And you wonder if that's going to have an impact on what we appeared to see from the game day document, which was that you had like rending or murderous strike type rules on floating values. Well, if it's a -1, does that mean if let's say I think in that document, plasma guns were rending 4+. Well, if I roll a 4, does that just fail to rend? Because it's still going to be a successful wound.
That's a very, very interesting question that obviously I don't think we'll have an answer for yet. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping we have an answer for it day one for when everything drops, but I'm afraid this is likely to be a first 3 months fact.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And that was something that, to harken back to other community members and other incidents, there was a time when Book 7 came out where someone had to really sit down and spell out and stress the importance to Games Workshop of modifying dice roll is dangerous, because your system is built on fixed odds and single possibilities where 1s always fail, 6s always succeed. Now if you have somebody like Magnus out there saying enemies are -1 to hit, now 6s no longer auto-hit. What does this mean? How does this interact or intersect with invisibility? How about Overwatch? Can you just never successfully Overwatch Magnus? I really hope that this is still nailed down in the core rules, if we're going so far as to possibly make this an integral part of at least one league.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Like I said, I've got some pretty serious questions about stuff like that. Just kind of pretty much what you already articulated, so I'm not going to rehash it, but it gives me concern.
Mm-hmm. I think understandably. Salamanders, though, do bring to bear a firmed up set of flamer weapons. They had previously had Promethean Gift, which gave them just +1, but this is a little more than just that. So the Dragon's Breath weapons are all fixed AP 4, and then they've got typically Strength +1 over their normal counterpart. So for the Dragon's Breath pistol, it's a template weapon, Strength 4, AP 4, Pistol 1, with Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath says when you Wall of Death with this weapon, you cause D6 hits instead of D3. So Salamanders still get +1 to their flamer weapons, Strength, now get seemingly a fixed AP of 4. This might cause problems if the Flamestorm Cannon was capable of being AP3 still, but if it wasn't, may not be an issue. And moving to D6 hammer or D6 Wall of Death instead of D3 is pretty bold as well. So that means the standard flamer is Strength 5, AP 4, Assault 1, Dragon's Breath. Your standard flamer is better than other Legion's heavy flamer.
Yep.
Your heavy flamer is a Strength 6 weapon, same rule. And the Flamestorm Cannon or the Torrent weapon is a Strength 7 AP 4 Heavy 1 18-inch Torrent. So we see that Torrent, as a rule, can now have a floating value, and it also has the Dragon's Breath rule. There you go, Salamanders. Vulcan lives for now, and we'll thank you to remember that. Pushing forward, we've got our last two legions. We're coming right down to it. We've got Raven Guard. Raven Guard have seemingly a multifaceted Legions Astartes, so they are keeping some level of what they've had in Heresy up to this point. So Talons. If a unit composed entirely of models with the Talons special rule is targeted by a shooting attack, all models gain Shrouded 6+, if the attacking unit is more than 8 inches away. In addition, all models with this rule gain Infiltrate. So we don't know what models get Talons. Presumably that is going to be analogous to what it was in Old Heresy, where it was things that are not bulky. Getting Shrouded 6+, after we find that Shrouded is damage mitigation. On the one hand, it means that the value on Apothecaries is a little weird for Raven Guard, but having a fallback 6-up save, as long as you are outside of 8 inches, is really strong. Really strong. And gaining Infiltrate with that can also get really impressive. We do have an implication here stated in the text below. Bikes and light vehicles will be Hawks, and dreadnoughts and heavy infantry, including jetpacks, are Falcons. So we have Talons, Hawks, and Falcons. Falcons unleash rapid strike assaults with a fury to match any distractingly shiny Blood Angel. Okay, interesting. We also got an advanced reaction for the Raven Guard, Fade to Black. This advanced reaction may be made once per battle during the shooting phase, when the enemy declares a shooting attack. Before resolving the attack, the unit targeted makes an immediate move equal to its highest unmodified initiative characteristic. Highest unmodified. So if you've got your Praetor in a unit, presumably they're still initiative 5, or if you may have a way to take a character, or obviously Korax himself is going to get a big kick on initiative, you move that distance. And the unit gains Shrouded 4+ for the remainder of the turn. Not for this single shooting attack, for the remainder of the turn. Really potent there. That you can take Korax and some Dark Furies, cheat them up, use this to try to dodge out of the way of line of fire, because it says, if the shooting attack is no longer valid due to breaking line of sight, then the active player may not select a different target and no attacks are made or dice roll. So now I took Korax and the Furies and I gave them a 4-up pseudo feel no pain, and I possibly broke whatever shooting attack you were in the process of trying to make.
So the question I have is, it doesn't mention what if you're out of range.
It just says if the shooting attack is no longer valid, and then it lists breaking line of sight as an example. So if you got out of range, that would do the same.
Okay. Because I was making sure that it wasn't like one thing was covered, but other things weren't.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very important to ask. And last but not least...
No, hold on.
Okay.
Oh, is there another rule about them?
Nope.
Is this another rule on them?
We were getting ready to move on to Alpha Legion, but if you've got something else to bring up, we can...
I do.
I'm
really like some of their rules, some of the ideas that are going behind them. I personally do not like or have any intention to create a force for the Raven Guard. But I must say that as one of the most underrepresented legions in the player base, from my experience, because going to events, you very rarely see Raven Guard players.
That's how sneaky they are.
True, but I really hope this leads to more people coming in and playing Raven Guard, just for sheer diversity of forces.
Yes.
Because their rules are really kind of nice that we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
So, I will admit, the big box that I got, the Mark 6 that are in it, they're not going to actually...
Glad to hear that. Honestly, I truly
am. Jamie and I with the same big brains.
I was Dark Angels, not Dark Angels. They're either going to be Raven Guard or Alpha Legion, and I've already painted an Alpha Legion for, so I'm kind of leaning towards the Raven.
You want me to throw the gauntlet with you?
Sure, I'll do it.
Paint the whole army as Alpha Legion.
Okay.
And seal them, and then hit them with chipping fluid, and then paint them again as Raven Guard and chip them down, and do Deliverance Era Alpha Legion Infiltrators as Raven Guard.
That's hilarious and so wrong, and I love it.
You know what?
I have tried to
I'll
convince
do it.
Kurt to do units like that forever, and I think he finally did. I think he picked up like my old Tyrant Siege Terminators or something, or maybe it was my old suzerains, and I was like, you know what you have to do with these. And he's like, oh man, that would look awesome. And like, if anybody who I know who still plays up here regularly, like, Kurt could pull that off, and it would look spectacular. It would blow my mind. But it's an insane amount of work because you're asking people to paint the same model twice, basically.
Yeah, basically. And to be honest with you, at least previously, the ways that I've actually painted Alpha League stuff, it's a very time-consuming process because it's not like a basic like one layer, multiple layers, like a solid then clear.
Because you're doing that color shift thing like I've done.
Yep. Yes.
And
I even on the vehicles, I actually put like dragon scale what do you call not templates, but basically stencils, and spray dragon scales on, and then go over the top of it with layer coats
to get that back on. Yep. So the other thing you could do instead of doing the whole army like that, just have like one model in each squad done to that level. That would let you get some amount of that effect without having to go all the way.
Well, see, I have a lot of. I have a Mark V army from Badab Wars of Space Sharks, and it's all Mark Vs and like old Terminator. So, and it's not like all gray; it's gray and black, like old school Raven Guard where the Space Sharks came from. So, it's not like I'm not opposed to it.
Are we ready then to talk Alpha Legion?
I think it's your time to shine, buddy.
It's time.
It's finally time. I've waited through 17 other legions to get here. I'm just disappointed I missed the Thousand Suns show. Like, I have got to be the dumbest human being on the earth that I saw 15, 19, and 20, and I went, yep, those are my lottery numbers. Alpha Legion Special Rule. Lies and Obfuscation. A model with this special rule is always considered to be 2 inches further away than it actually is. It is cumulative with the effects of other range modifiers, including night fighting or war gear. Oh my gosh. The amount of salt that this rule can induce. I read this and I'm like, this is like 5th edition chapter tactics, or specifically combat tactics level of just like, if somebody doesn't know what they're going to get into here, you can absolutely manhandle somebody with this. The ability to swoop in and claim shots at Melta range and then possibly be outside of Melta range. On the cheat sheet that we saw from Games Day, where you have the movement phase reaction to move directly away from enemy units that advance on you.
You potentially always stay just out of charge as well.
Yep. If you come in and you double tap bolters at 12 inches and the other guy thinks he's going to charge you, he might have another thing coming. It is subtle, and I might be totally wrong, and this rule could almost never matter because things move fast enough that it just doesn't matter. But I think this is going to be a big rule. And then we find that something that used to be a privilege reserved for the coils of the Hydra is now just innate for their lead. The rewards of treachery. The controlling player of a detachment with Alpha Legion faction may select a single variant of Legions Astartes other than Alpha Legion when forming a detachment. That detachment may include a single unit normally only available to the other type of Alpha Legion. I don't know if that will cover unique console choices or not, but even just yay old tactic of, hey those Iron Circle are pretty cool. I'd like those. Oh, suzerains. Those are shiny. I'll play those. One that I got a lot of mileage out of for a lot of years were Grave Wardens. And then here in the last year or two, where I've swapped over to using Justarin. There's a lot of potential in this rule.
What are the named Iron Warrior heavies?
The Siege Tyrants.
Yeah, a lot of people did a lot of Siege Tyrants with the old Alpha Legion.
Yep. A unit may only be selected if all models possess the certain Legion Astartes rule, and no unit may be selected. That includes models that are unique, so you can't steal people's character, yada. Any unit selected this rule is paid for from the points total as normal, and uses the Force Organization slot as dictated by the unit's profile. So here's another big shift. Where previously you took Rewards of Treason as an elite's choice, you now take them in whatever choice they came from. So personally, this made stealing certain things unappealing. Because I was like, man, I'm giving up one of my, now admittedly 4, but I'm giving up one of my elite slots for this thing. The fact that now you could presumably steal, if they're still around, like Space Wolf Grey Slayers, and use those as a substitute compulsory troop choice. That carries a big implication that now, possibly, Alpha Legion have a lot more options on the table than they did previously. Very, very excited to see how this all shakes out. And we have, just 2 weeks between here and there?
Yep.
Time's getting closer.
So how happy does it make you?
Oh, deeply. So I did go out of my way to, watch the painting tutorial for Alpha Legion, because I know that even having spoken with Matt Kane when he was tasked with coming up with that scheme, when they were like, hey, you need to find a way to do a color shift scheme without just telling people go buy color shift paints. And obviously the model that they've put in the article doesn't have the most shift to him.
Doesn't look like.
But getting a scheme that's capable of being done with off-the-shelf pots and being done with a brush rather than an airbrush is really big, and getting it to turn out relatively as nicely as what they've got here in this sample image, especially knowing Alpha Legion were extremely popular in first edition, and I don't see any reason why it would change in the coming edition.
They were just an absolute total took his.
They made me get an airbrush, and I had to learn a lot to make that work.
I mean, I was the same way. I mean, I already had an airbrush, but having to mix clears and making enough. If you had to kind of overestimate so that you didn't run out, because if you had to remix, even if you had the formula of how you mixed it with pipettes and dropper, the chances that it would turn out exactly the same were impossible. Seemed
I was very fortunate that the army that I put together came together as well as it did. There's a couple units here and there that are marked outliers, but overall I count myself as lucky that for a novice to have gotten the army to come together as well as I felt I did.
Done well, it is a beautiful army. It's kind of same thing with the Night Lords. If you know how to do the lightning effect on Night Lords and can do it well, they're both beautiful armies. They're not just it's just not slab color. Even if you are putting depth of color in, it's those were kind of the two. I'm not going to say painter's choice for armies, but a lot of skilled painters love doing it. So.
And I'll throw out there, I know Duncan's heard me say it, and I don't know if you were on the show when I said it, Jamie, but I specifically cursed Matt Kane's name for the fact that he made, when I was taking his class and doing Thousand Suns, he saw me getting ready to just do the shoulders like I was doing the rest of the Marine, and he was like, you're not going to do that, are you? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, put the white shoulders on them, you fool. And now that I did it for the class, I'm just like, well, dang it, now I've got to put the whole army this way, because it looks so much nicer when you've got that big, bold pop, that strong contrast to play against each other.
Now, I remember at Heresy Camp, there was one guy that we were all doing, most people were doing rhinos. I think I did a Predator. There was one guy that brought a big Chumi, what's the Bane with the Volkite on it?
Glaive.
Yeah, the Glaive.
Okay. So there was a guy that brought that Henry was in the class, and the guy wanted to do Alpha League. And Henry's like, dude, I don't have that kind of time this week. He's like, you have 3 days, but I don't have that much time to help you.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to have to hold your hand, because the larger the model you try to put this process on, the more complicated it gets.
Yeah. And I mean, the guy worked on it outside of class for a lot of time. But it started turning out really, really well. But it was nowhere even close to being finished by the end of that week.
Yeah. Well, that takes us through Legion previews. Does anybody have any closing remarks before we sign this one off?
I think we've seen some interesting stuff. And I definitely think that we're all really hyped up to get into our legions when they come out in a couple weeks. We've been talking about what we're going to do as far as show-wise as we wait for this to come up. And I think next week we're going to be looking forward to doing our first what we call hobby show, going through and discussing some of the things that we've learned during the course of the podcast and discussing that and putting up posts about that. And then when we get to official release time, we're going to try to devote at least one episode a month to being more hobby-centric cast, as that's kind of what we're all in this for.
I will say that I know we are trying to line up some special guests as well coming up. I don't want to spoil the surprise of who we get, but we do have some painters that we're in the process of trying to get.
Yep. And just, I personally want to take a brief moment and kind of take the room's temperature. Coming into this string of previews, we had talked about wish lists. And I put on my wish list, not counting, models coming out in plastic, the game becoming more available to more people. I said the thing that I wanted most was a balance pass to kind of smooth out the fact that certain legions had or hadn't kind of been left behind from the initial, the very first Black Book, all the way to Book 9. And I think with maybe one or two exceptions, and I don't find them particularly egregious, I feel comfortable and confident in saying I feel strongly that what we've been shown appears to be a much more level-handed representation of the legions. Less in a vacuum, less, we're developing this legion right now. I feel strongly we're less likely to see a Book 7 level problem with this release than what we did with the release of Book 7.
I agree. And I will say it does, officially we haven't seen the full Legion rules for every legion, but it seems like it has been a good reset where they're all starting somewhat close to the same starting, let's put it that way. Now, I will say that there are certain things that I'm a little disappointed or missing, but hopefully that'll get...
Yeah, same. I think that there's a couple of lists that we can see right now that might be considered winners as far as the internet autists are concerned. But I feel better about this than I did opening up Book 7 or Book 8 or Book 9 and comparing it to Book 1.
So the first 3 books, maybe 4 books seemed fairly, I'm not going to say even keel, but they were close to the same power levels. And then starting with really, what was it, 6? It was just a major jump every book.
Yep. I think it'll be, and they might just fact a couple things here and there, and it might change things. I think that my biggest worry is probably the fists right now, as far as power levels. Just because it's such everybody in the freaking Legion gets this. But they could always just fact that by literally removing guns from that or doing other things. It's a simple fix.
To be honest with you, it looks like several of the people that worked on the rule set, they have opened up forums or groups and have been inviting people that have been playing Heresy for a while to get feedback on stuff that they've put out and it seems like they're already maybe working on facts for stuff that people have already have questions like the Imperial Fits. I could easily see a fax coming out not long after the books are official.
But I think I feel a little bit better than cautiously optimistic than I did before. I don't know about Duncan was also the one that was feeling that same way. I feel a little bit better than that. I don't want to go into full hog toxic positivity territory, but I think I'm going to enjoy this game more than I thought I was going to in the beginning, which, and that was the biggest worry I had, is because of how much I disliked 8th and 9th, I was really worried that we were going to go down that road. I knew that they weren't getting rid of all the things that made me that went from Heresy to 8th and 9th, but I knew that there was a possibility of things changing enough to make me wonder why I was playing.
Right. No, I totally agree. I've seen enough 8th and 9th and tried to play that I can't deal with the power creep, and it's supposed to be a simple way to play, but it's like literally you have to have like 30 different books go and play because they just keep adding stuff in. You can't keep track of it. I feel like right now with the main core book and the 2 Legion books or whatever, Traitor and Loyalist books, it feels like a good start. It feels like a really good place to start in, so that like everybody's kind of on the same keel to start off for the most part.
Well, these armies are. We'll see what the other ones come out and how everything else looks as we go forward, and hopefully those won't be too far behind. I mean, ideally, in my opinion, by the end of the year, we'd have everything as we left it this time last year, but we'll see what happens.
So, with all of that having been said, I think there's legitimate pause for concern. I just want to make sure that I leave our listeners with an understanding. Try your best. Nobody's perfect. Try your best to come into release weekend with an open mind. Find a community that you know and that you trust, or that you have some shared sense of gamesmanship with, and then figure out, are things on the even for your group? And if they're not, figure out what your group is going to do in the near term to fix it, and try to talk with those who can impact change to try to get to that point. But the thing that I've got to stress more than anything, probably none of us wrote these rules.
I didn't, I promise.
I didn't. I definitely didn't.
Probably, if your buddy's army is now just beating you to death every game, he didn't ask for this. And if your army is beating your buddy to death every game, you didn't ask for this. Keep an open mind. Take it slow. It's, at the end of the day, just a game about plastic spacemen with your friends.
Well said.
With that having been said, and unless I hear to the contrary, I think that's the show. Stay accountable to your hobby and your buddies, and we'll see you next time.